Running the second part of the webinar series on India AI CyberGuard Hackathon. We'll open the floor with Shrimati Kavita Bhatia from MeitY, and she'll be taking you through a brief recap of what the hackathon is all about. Thank you so much.
Good morning, all. It's my privilege to welcome you all for this webinar on India AI CyberGuard Hackathon. Just a second. Good morning, and I welcome you all for the webinar on India AI CyberGuard Hackathon. In fact, India AI mission has been approved by the government in March 24 with a basic mandate to democratize AI, reinforce India's AI leadership globally, and ensure that whatever India does is ethical and it is in the interest of the interest of the citizens of our country. As this mission has 7 pillars, the first pillar is about the compute, where we propose to create 10,000 GPUs for the country. The second pillar is the large language multimodal model, where we will create Indian multimodal models which will be trained on the Indian data, and then we will be having a domain specific models based on the large model. The third pillar is the India AI datasets pillar, where we will create a platform which will have the datasets, which will give access to the citizens, startups, researchers, so that they can use the data for creating AI innovated applications for societal needs. The fourth pillar is the application innovation, where we will create 25 applications, national rollout applications in the critical domain sectors, and out of which this hackathon is also included in this domain. The fifth pillar is the future skills, where we propose to create data labs in the tier 2 and tier 3 cities, as well as give scholarships and fellowships to the BTech, MTech, and PhD students, so that we can increase the AI index of our country. The sixth pillar is the startup financing, where we will support the startups in their entire journey from pre-seed to seed and from seed to growth stage. And last but not the least, the safe and trusted pillar, where we propose to create applications which are safe, trusted, and are on the domain on the Indian data sets. I would request others to please mute their mic. The pillar which I talked about, the India AI application sector, under which we have collaborated with the I4C, Indian Cyber Crime Coordination Center, and we are floated a hackathon, which is basically will create a platform so that the Indian talent can contribute in strengthening the cybersecurity of India. This hackathon is in 3 stages. The first stage involves an online round in which the participants will submit a prototype of an NLP-based AI model for text classification and analytics. The basic objective here is to categorize complaints based on the parameters such as fraud and the victim profile. And the submissions will be basically evaluated on the metrics like accuracy, precision, and F1 score. The 20 selected participants of stage 1 will be taken to the stage 2, which is basically a 3-day online 3-day hackathon in Delhi, where we will be providing with an NCRP data sets to enhance the model which they had submitted. The participants will develop a fully NLP model that guides the citizen in filling accurate cybercrime reports, and emphasis will be on achieving high accuracy of the model. The best performing 3 solutions will be taken to the stage 3, where they will be working in the real world environment and will be actually showcasing the prototype and demonstrate their effectiveness to the jury. The final selected team will have the opportunity to work with the I4C in taking their application forward. Who all can participate? We have made sure that the Indian companies, the startups who have basically registered in DPIT, as well as the companies who have registered with the companies under the Companies Act, and the 51% of their shareholding is with the Indian citizen, so that these organizations can participate. The academic institutions, the R&D institutions, which include IITs, NITs, IIITs, IICRs, and all the private institutions which are registered under AICTE or NAC are eligible to participate. The autonomous bodies and the public sector organization undertakings, which are basically involved in the R&D, are encouraged to join, and individuals as well as the mixed teams, that is Indian students, researchers, or working professionals in their individual capacity, or teams from the Indian organizations can also participate and take part in this hackathon. The teams who have decided to participate basically will have to register as a team or an individual and submit, upload their source code on the GitHub or OpenForge. If it's a team, then you need to make sure that the team leader is also there and he will complete the entire application filling and formalities of all those things. However, if the students are participating, it is not a mandate that on day one they need to be a part of, they need to register as a startup. But whenever those team is selected in the stage 3, they have to register as a startup or a company, whichever the format they have participated in, so that they can take it forward with them. There is a interesting awards associated with each stages. The first stage has 25 lakhs, the second prize has 7 lakhs, and the third prize is 3 lakh. However, we would also encourage the women teams to participate, because there is a special prize of 5 lakhs over and above the prizes, so that the the women can also take part. There are a lot of financial incentives and to the hackathon participants, but the most important is visibility, networking opportunity, and we will also make sure that there is a connect with the government officials, industry players, as well as they get an opportunity to work on impactful real world challenges. With this, I would request and urge everyone to take part, because this is very interesting and you will be working for a cause which is very important, because these days you must have heard a lot of cyber frauds being done. In fact, I foresee, as per the I4C records, almost 6,000 plus daily there is a fraud being done, and any one of us is likely to be a next target. So in the interest of our country and the citizens of our country, I would request all of you to take part in this hackathon. Thank you. Over to you, Anurag.
Thank you so much, Kavita ma'am. Uh, it request Vinayak Gotsi ji from CEO of DSCI to take up the next session. Over to you, Vinayak ji.
Thank you, Anurag, for starting this webinar and on AI and cybersecurity. And I'll certainly walk some of the couple of slides on this, and then we'll invite Rajesh, which is CEO of NSC, and also Priyank to really carry the discussion forward on how the AI is definitely playing critical role in solving cybersecurity problems. Also, sometimes it creates a problem for cybersecurity. There are a couple of slides which I like to run as a kind of a context settings part of this session. Hope my slides are visible, Anurag.
Yes, Vinayak ji, it's visible. Thank you.
So as we know, the things when we talk about generative AI, we always talk about security, definitely important part. Historically, we had been looking at security, but privacy in last 5, 6 years of that time had become very significant. And nowadays we talk about ethics quite critically, right? And just to make this understand, so there are these different planes, right? One is a ethical plane to look at the generative AI, especially. So when we talk about ethics, we talk about how the models are explainable, transparent, biasness is an important part. Privacy also falls into the ethics part of the this ecosystem. Then how the data is being used, for example, creating unknown track relationship, and sometimes dark patterns that can be all, and that could also fall into the ethical dimension and plane. And also how sometimes the model can also erode the fact, right? And sometimes hallucination kind of problems do create that kind of problem. And this is one of the key domain in when we talk about generative AI, and especially the LLM ecosystem that we have been seeing since December 2022. Then there is another plane, is a social plane, right, where we had all been talking about deepfake, misinformation, and criminal use of the generative AI, and that's one of the significant part that needs to be looked at when we talk about generative AI. Then another domain from the security, ethics, and privacy perspective is the when you are adopting AI, right? Then AI, the security in the context of AI, and that's what we'll be discussing in the panel discussion, is how exactly different problem that AI creates for your security, right? From poisoning data, attack on data infrastructure, to data theft, to disclosure that may happen, the attack that may happen on AI application. And nowadays, we largely talk about business use AI without even IT knowing it, and shadow AI problems that may get created. And then there is the issue of a security of a AI model itself. And many of the models that we have been using, they are subject to or exposed to the query attack, data polymorphism specific attack, or prompt injection for that matter, or model manipulation, model theft sometimes also, right? And content anomaly. And sometimes there could be attacks which could help you to even that's called as an inference attack for that matter. So eventually upfront it may not be able to give that input, but sometimes the way you play with your query, it can help you to know the data by just looking at the inferences it draw from that perspective. So this is another important plan that needs to be looked at. And then from the attacker and criminal perspective, because many times enterprises are inhibited, restricted to use generative AI, but attackers are using it quite aggressively. And and most of the models nowadays that we see are competing on coding part. When they are competing on accuracy of coding, so they will be very good in terms of putting together that payloads of malware. So they are learning from the oral language, and they could be very easy. It could be very easy for you to devise and define the payload for the malware, basically, right? Gathering footprint, devising modus operandi would be very easy by using LLM, because the different contexts that can be brought together to find the possible vulnerability, weakness, and more importantly, create the modus operandi, basically, right? And then overall barrier to find vulnerability and launch attacks would also get significantly reduced with the generative AI in place, right? So these different planes are now shaping the discussion around the security, privacy, and ethics of generative AI. And to take care of all of these things, there are a lot of solutions also came into the place, right? So one is specific to model for that matter. So how can you test model? How can you detect the anomaly? How can you do the vulnerability assessment of AI model? How can you do the leakage of a data that could happen on model on one hand? Other hand, how can you really assess the externality of the model, assess the virality of the content that get created as a deepfake content, or how can you detect the deepfake problems, and even how can you still comply with some of the requirements even if you use a generative AI system, basically. There are some areas of solutions which are able to help you to monitor the AI use of organization better, which can help you to moderate the outcome better, which can also help you to do the compete in a secure environment, right? And there are some solutions which are there to help you to secure the application that you have built on top of the AI. There's some solution which could be helping you to take care of the data security or privacy specific issues that may come when it comes to the generative AI ecosystem, basically, right? So there are various different these kind of solutions which are coming to help you solving these problems basically. And most of the problems that we discuss and some of the problems are still in the discussion basically. But there are some approaches, solutions, ideas which are coming in place, and probably most all the security community in India and other parts of the globe had been now increasingly putting their effort towards, one is to understand the problem, one is to understand the different planes of the problem, and second is to find different solutions and different solution ideas for that basically. So what I like to really come to this is like, while we talk about the problems and solutions that could come, but specific to cybersecurity, and probably that will be context for our discussion with Mr. Rajesh and Priyank here, is what generative AI basically lends for cybersecurity, right? So there are various different things that generative AI can really help you understand basically. One is to observe the behavior of system at a longer duration of time, larger duration of time. It could help you understand better, and it could improve the observability of the organization basically. It can also help you manage the fraud better. It can also help you to protect the organization from the malware. It can also help you to detect and defend from the threats which will coming from the mobile system. So there are different use cases which I'm talking about as a part of how generative AI can improve all of these kind of capabilities in cybersecurity, orchestration, threat intelligence, secure app development basically. And why is it is able to do that? Because generative AI, one of the important attributes of generative AI, if you look at, it makes information more accessible basically. It can bring the more interactivity to the discussion that you do. For that matter, managing security is very complex, but generative AI can make it very easy for you to understand. It can make the information about security more accessible. It can help you really to have very easy conversation with your system and know the issues and problem much better basically. It can help you to extend the coverage of security. It can help you to enrich the overall understanding about the problems that you have. It can explain the problem better. It can also help you document better, because that's one of the important thing when we talk about security and demonstration of the compliances. It can summarize it better. It can decompose it better, and more importantly, it can assist the security operations much better basically, right? So these are some of the generic ideas of a way the generative AI can help you improve the cybersecurity. And with this context, I think we like to understand on a specific level, on specific practical level, how this AI, one is problem it throws, but more importantly, the kind of solution or basic capability it leads to or lends to cybersecurity effort basically. And for this, I think I would like to invite both Rajesh and Priyank on this webinar and take the discussion forward. So good to see you, Priyank, and Mr. Rajesh. And after long, I'm seeing you, Priyank, and Rajesh sir as well, right? So we'd like to start this conversation by welcoming both of you, and also thanking Anurag for getting us together for this conversation. Um, so how do you see this entire paradigm of security that do get changed because of the AI basically? So I can start with Rajesh sir with you, and then I'll come to Priyank.
So I tell you, say cyber has been existing um, uh, for last 2 years. It has been evolving,
Yeah.
but the sea change that we see today is because of the digitization, because of the data volumes, because of the interdependencies that have come up, with which all the traditional security tools, technologies, processes that have been put in place actually look obsolete every 2 3 years. And more so it started happening with post covid, when there were interdependencies that became beyond the boundaries of organizations, where e-governance initiatives picked up. Your perimeters just vanished, and your core assets or crown jewels were no longer in your militarized zones. Primarily you could see anybody and everybody hitting your door and primarily trying to find a path in, right? So with that, the three V's, which actually became very difficult for us to manage as cybersecurity professionals, is the velocity, the kind of attack vectors, and that also applies to the fraud vectors as well. I mean, the velocity and the volume of things that were actually hitting were much more than typically could be handled manually. While human is a key element in the entire chain, and the intelligence which human brings in, and to my personal opinion, artificial intelligence is can only supplement human intelligence, and I don't see, and I don't take it as a replacement of a human intelligence. But there is a finite thing that a human intelligence could have done with the volumes and the velocity of events that or the traffic flows or the logs that are getting generated. The third element, which actually made it much more complicated, is the veracity. So volume, veracity, and the velocity, these three made it humanly not possible for the security operations to work the way it used to traditionally work out. I mean, from just an indicator perspective, the EPS typically in a larger organization that you come across is nothing less than 6 digits. So 6 digits per second EPS. I mean, think of the whichever brain can absorb. I mean, you can't even cite so much traffic flow. How will you detect what potentially is going wrong? So I think that's something which redesigned everything. And the core problem that made it much more important for us is what I call is, in the cyber world, the most important thing is time. So the objective that we always want to live out is, can we detect early? Can we detect proactively? Can we reduce that time of things going wrong? Humanly, it is not possible. So AI came to us probably as a shot in the arm or helped us. Once we have detected it, how do we contain it? How do we respond it? That itself is an iterative process. So my overall intent of cost of breach going up to be reduced could not have been possible with the traditional set of things. And that's where I felt the AI has helped the industry at large, maybe sometime through the partners, which may be our vendors, which may be our own self-grown teams. The other element, which I think also why AI became more important, is we always know this demand-supply mismatch that has been existing in the cyber world, right? So we can't hire resources without understanding that they are able to add value. The moment you bring AI tools which can support the understaffed team, is actually work partly done. So the resource shortage also helped this evolution of AI to be penetrating in the environment. The third or the fourth element, which actually made it much more important to use, is, think of artificial intelligence being not sorry think of the threat intel being there in the environment, wherein we have the lot of internal threat intel, we have a lot of external threat intel, lot of intel coming from regulators, lot of intel paid service providers. On a daily basis, you would be seeing a huge plethora of data that you have to absorb, look out for actionable, and quickly get into the scheme of things. Not humanly possible again. AI is something which would give you that visibility. So AI is good for cyber, but I can only say is, AI is a double-edged sword. So it's good, it adds to a lot of good value add, but it also, if not managed well, can actually give you a different trouble. So you need to manage both from a offensive side, how things can potentially go wrong, and how do you, because AI is, as it's available for the organization, it's also available for attackers and cyber criminals. So how does it work out? What is the evolution? I think that's what the core intent of this discussion is all about. And over the period of time, through you, we will probably deliberate more on that.
So, Prank, coming to you, and you are investing in some of the startups which build those capability, right? And last 5, 6 years had been years of uh, security operations, and those operations are increasingly data operations, right? And Rajesh talked about like hundreds of thousand events per second, and that's one event is a set of data basically, right? And that you need to work with those data and at a very real time basis, right? So you have to know history, and at the same time you have to know what is happening now, basically, right? So how do you see the technology market ecosystem and the innovation happening in this area had been responding to the challenges thrown by these three things which Rajesh talked about, volume, velocity, and veracity?
Yeah, I think first of all, thanks, Vinayak sir, to have me on the panel. Thank you to India AI Mission and Kavita ma'am for the great opening. Yeah, I think Rajesh sir brought up a lot of very good practical points. And as an investor, we keep on looking to seeing how startups are solving all these issues. I think from a technology standpoint, we are starting to see a lot of fundamental innovations in the AI architecture itself. I'll give you a very small example. So LLMs today are based on transformer architecture, but to solve for the volume of data all the different time series which are being thrown up in, let's say, your observability platforms on logs, as well as like Rajat mentioned about threat intels, right? All of that has to be correlated, and LLMs today cannot correlate time series data. They cannot correlate a lot of reasoning. They don't have an understanding of all the various, let's say, systems which are being used internally, right? So you can throw it a log, but it will not know the log, that where's the log coming from. Is it Splunk, Datadog? Or it does not have a knowledge of your architecture as well. So what we are starting to see now is advent of new technology integrations which are cross-disciplinary. So taking LLMs, actually the fundamental transform model is now being changed to graph transformer,
Yeah.
which has an insertion of graph knowledge. So it can understand the usage of a variety of networks. It can understand, okay, I'm seeing 6 different logs. How are these logs connected? It needs to understand architecture of the entire deployed system as well. Okay, there's a user authentication system. There is a, CRM system. There is a transaction system, for example.
Mm.
It needs to understand, okay, why particular systems are failing or some incidents have happened, so why are those incidents happening? So today's architecture on LMs itself is going to change, and we are seeing teams which are doing innovative work in just coming up with newer architectures which can support these systems better. One of the things Mr. Rajesh talked about was unavailability of talent, for example, right? Or augmenting uh, the security engineers today to be able to manage the entire volume, because volume is going to keep on increasing. There we are seeing co-pilots, and with co-pilots use this fundamental architecture of graph transformers at the bottom. Uh, they are using this because today mean time to response is couple of hours. A mean time to resolution is sometimes a couple of days or more. So AI is being used, leveraged in conjunction with human beings to improve and increase this much faster response, right? And I think there LLMs are playing a very big role because synthesizing all of this data, making sure digesting all the which commands to run, for example, for a security engineer, coming up with them very fast. Okay, this is what you need to do. I think that is where Vinayak, you also mentioned in your presentation, right? That lowering the skill requirements,
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
happening. All of this is being done. That is the second point. And the third point, I think, which I want to make is India is in a very nice juncture where, since human beings and conjunction with AI are going to be used, a lot of security services, MSPs, can be now run out of India, are anyways being run out of, but now they can provide these security services as well.
Yeah.
So that is some of the things which we are seeing on the ground
Yeah.
from
Priyank, as we are with you, uh, so after LLM, right, December 22, which brought entire new paradigm, right? But so there is a difference here, right? One difference is uh, the all the enterprise security solution had been using AI for long, right? And they have been using with their own data and their own platform, basically, right? And there's a reason for that, right? So there is a when you're taking decision, and one small event could create larger ramification. There's a precision requirement there, right? And the precision AI is critical to take some specific decision of security, right? But LLM brought the concept of probabilistic way of looking things, right? Because uh, what LLM does, they give attention to possible problem, right? And that's what the graph databases or wherever have been trying to learn, right? They try to look at all the minutest plot and they try to give attention to, but still not very perfect in terms of how much percentage they can give to, right? So there's a precision LLM and there is this generative precision AI and generative LLM basically. So fundamentally, how do you bring both of those capability together?
I think that's a very hard question. That today's LLMs have hallucinate. So obviously, there's no clear solution to this. So wherever precision is involved, people are not deploying it as much as possible. I think today, using humans in conjunction is the solve which most people are trying to do. However, there are some cases in security where LLMs can be involved, even with hallucinations. I was talking to one of the large security providers. Um, like for example, firewall rules in WAFs, right? Over a period of time in any organization, these tend nobody touches firewall rules. They become very hard to manage. You have millions of rules sometimes in organizations, and this is where LLMs can do without touching production systems. They can actually just go through, identify, and dedupe a lot of data, understand what is right, what is wrong, and make it simpler and easier. And this is one example of where an assist of LLM is being applied. Hallucinations here are limited because you're not doing it in live, and then the output is being seen by human beings. Direct systems where LLMs can be used, I think that's a little tricky. Um, I have not seen a live deployment yet, but people are using it in code coverage, for example. So uh, today, people are using Snyk, which is one of our Axle companies, in doing library scanning. But even there, not 100% of the code is being covered. Or, for example, when you are doing development, at that point of time, you want to understand, security engineer needs to understand the code, understand what loopholes can happen. At that point of time, again, AI is being used. But to be honest, I am not. So it is happening in production, but all of this is happening alongside human beings. I have not seen an autonomous deployment yet.
Yeah,
Uh,
so it can be used to explain it better. It can use to assess the rule set for that matter. It can be used to summarize the understanding probably. But when it comes to actual taking decision, I'm not still seeing those kind of implementation. But Rajesh sir, I'm not sure whether you had or your team had been deliberating use of LLM for any kind of a task. But can you help us ki, at practical level, what are those use cases that you have been using or you have been looking at? One is the black box AI that we had been using until now, and then the LLM which is coming in. So, in a practical application that you have found uh, that can be really leveraging the capability of LLMs.
I think the learning capabilities are required. I mean, while I definitely agree it's a probabilistic stuff, we always have a confidence score depending on the appetite. Because, but one, it gives you a visibility on how to go ahead with and learning. Let me come back to why I was mentioning learning, because there are a lot of technologies which have become very difficult to implement in environments, production environments, and some of that was when Priyank was mentioning on. If you talk of DAM, you talk of DLP, you talk of WAF, these two technologies are in isolation very good technologies, but when you or for example the microsegmentation, when you bring something like this in your environment, you don't know actually what to allow, what not to allow, what to allow, what to prevent, what to block. So first thing what you do is bring in these, let it learn, and that's where the maturity of that, even if it is not learning 100%, even if it's learning 80%, that gives you somewhere a good starting point wherein you keep refining it and doing it. So if you have built up a backend, and maybe not a generative AI equivalent, but something which can give me a visibility from its learning processes and things, it gives me a visibility on what is acceptable, what is not, other than I probably fearing to get into a blocking mode for years together. With these learning models, at least I have been able to get that confidence within 3 months, 6 months. But most of my genuine traffic, and here the only subjective thing that comes in and we go with an assumption is all what's passing through is good. Because if data poisoning is happening on the fly, your training models are wrong, then everything is put to rest. But at least to a perspective that it gives you a more structured way of going ahead and deploying some of these technologies which you didn't know how to, where to put that plug and say, okay, now is the good time. For example, behavior analytics, these things are good, they look good, but where do I get the metric, where do I get the confidence score? Unless there is a genuine traffic getting blocked, I will believe that whatever I've learned out is actually passing through. So may not be Gen AI I feel more of acquisition of or consumption of Gen AI is more for translating the data models to more textual, absorbable forms through dashboards, images, and creating FAQs and all that stuff. But the AI pure play, the traditional AI, if I have to learn things through, it is actually helping in analytics. It's happening in adaptive authentications. It's helping in bringing these learning models in as part of deployment of all these technology tools, which inherently may not have been built with keeping AI in mind. But with these AI models, it gives me that comfort that if I'm giving it the learning curve, it will actually be get deployed with much more better success stories, then it will actually create a deterrent layer. So that's where, and in addition to that, your DDoS, your UEBA, all of these actually have been using AI to a significant, may not be llamas, but for me, llamas are the second phase of it. First is, let's see something happening which traditionally could not have been done, then take it more from a large language perspective and see how best learnings can come in.
Yeah, but so this is LLM until now, Priyank, right? Which is still trying to improve the maturity, and which is still until now is used to explain things better, document it better, make it more conversational, make it more interactive conversation, right? And build good AI interface on top of what is complex system available underneath the cybersecurity, especially you can ask simple question, you can give answer, right? So, such kind of use cases are definitely important. But going forward, that people say is AI will be more trustworthy, more accurate for that matter, and then probably you will offload decision making to AI because of two things. One is its ability to understand and give attention to all possible dimensions will be improved quite significantly. And second part is ki once it take a decision, it can logically explains it actually, right? And that's why people will be trusting more to AI system and will gradually offload decision making to AI as well. So do you see that is coming in coming 2 3 years of time, the entire chain of action can be offloaded to AI system and it can take decision without even human intervention?
I think we are now getting into the discussion of AI agents,
Yeah.
and because the autonomous decisioning is definitely that's in the realm. I think AI agents today tend to be rudimentary. They are useful again for offline or non-production. But having said that, they have shown a lot of promise in terms of, let's say you are getting a million events per day in false positives. How do you go through that, right? And to enable all of that, going through it is where reasoning engines are required. Um, However, O1, like GPT-O1 or Claude,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
the current versions, I think those are still, even though they are state of the art, they are very expensive to apply at on very large data sets. If you're generating million incidents on million logs, and then you put O1 everywhere, that's pretty expensive. You're talking about spending 10,000, $5,000 to $10,000 in a day, which is not practical for I think any organization in their security architectures, right? But yes, people have tried, and we are starting to see a lot of AI security agent companies which are coming up, which tend to take whatever is there, auto remediation for incidents they are starting to do, but they are very expensive. I think they are being used by the Fortune 500, not even the Fortune 1000 or Fortune 5000. So yeah, um, I think the biggest thing which is stopping them, like what Rajesh had mentioned, and just building on that, is they don't understand the world that well. LLMs are trained on generic English data. They don't understand the terminology of cybersecurity that well, and that's where you need to go in and fine tune them significantly. So we are starting to see customer-specific deployments of agents, but not necessarily generic deployments. You can't just take one and just deploy everywhere. Those kind of deployments. So that is one. But interesting thing is using of AI securities in the SDLC pipeline
Yeah.
that we are starting to see. So okay, I'll give you an example. So uh, uh, at the start of writing the code, if you can write the code which is very secure, what if even before writing the code, you can actually look at the user story generated by a product manager and say, hey, what are the security loopholes which are possible in this particular uh, user story, and then add those security user stories inside your Atlassian or Jira so that the developer is aware that he has to
Yeah.
take care of those things. So shift left of security using AI, we have already started to see.
Yeah, I mean, but there is one question somebody asked on this, ki how in SDLC people can use it. In fact, and as you rightly explained, many time at a developer level, developers sometimes fail to understand all possible ways or scenarios that the code could go wrong, right, in an operating environment, basically, where developer can use generative AI to create those stories, different user stories of security, basically, and also create those scenarios which could probably make that particular code vulnerable, right? And that is becoming easy, and that's why I also see in SDLC cycle, generative AI can play significant role, and you are already seeing some of the experimentation in this area.
Yeah. Yeah. See, one of the other places is data security itself. Identifying uh, PII data
Yeah,
is hard. And we are seeing AI solutions which can understand the same information in multiple places, in different places altogether. Customer information might be stored in the database in one way, or in CRM in another way. But using similarity search, you can understand and identify, okay, this is the same
yeah.
customer we talked about. So we are starting to see some of those applications as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is like Rajesh, like until now, the data discovery classification was largely keyword search, but now increasingly the machine learning is helping you to really cluster the possible sensitive data, and that is definitely one of the important area that we also see that a lot of possibility of AI solving a lot of data security problems and issues, right? For example, DAM solution, if all the connections can be monitored and you can better explain those connections, okay, why these connections are being made, and AI, generative AI can help you explain each and every connection making to data better, and you can really create a quite a good records of processing on top of it. Then probably such scenarios could be very good scenarios and good use cases of use of generative AI in cybersecurity, in data security, or HDLC thing. So what do you think about these use cases?
Yeah, I think the two ways. What I see over the period of time, these AI integrations or AI usage would happen, and again, with in certain places, it may not be required to go with all the benefits of Gen AI. I may go with the traditional. Like, for example, today my threat hunting happens manually.
Yeah,
Okay, when I can just put in, let it learn through, let it give me low and slow attacks which are not visible through my normal sims and all that stuff. So that's something which doesn't require any Gen AI capability. So I can still leverage on my additional, the existing set of things, and come up with those threat hunting use cases through a predictive AI. So that's something which should be on the roadmap. Second is, again, before I come to the Gen AI, the other area which I feel still the AI can help is, and that's quite subjective, is the return on security investment, because that's something which we all primarily believe. Yeah, one is that there is a compliance driven investments, there is risk based investments.
yeah, yeah,
Compliance investments, you don't need to have a ROC,
yeah, yeah,
but for a risk based assessment, sometimes it's better to have a ROC, and this these having a visibility of all that's flowing around, all the threat intel, all information that's available across the globe, that can actually help you arrive at what you have invested in, and what's the value add that you got out of it. Maybe successful events, missed event, near miss events, whatever. So learning across the ecosystem and can actually give me a more quantifiable way of defining the risk posture, and also give me a ROC, which may the other area which I feel where AI can actually help is giving me recommendation on my posture improvement.
yeah,
So learning things through learning everything on logs, process failures, have my policies uploaded. I mean, I can even think of creating an automation checklist, which a Gen AI can be a good tool too, right?
yeah,
So I have just created my policies, I put in the regulations, it assesses everything and say, oh, if you have to do this assessment, these are the 20 to 20, 30 checks that you should put in place. So automation checklist is a good use case from a Gen AI perspective that I potentially want to see someday, wherein even the risk assessments can happen on the fly. I mean, you have created those assessments, you upload all the logs, you update, you have integrations done, and you come up with your results. So
yeah,
I think potentially I feel the use cases are plenty. Yes, each of them will have its own challenges of integration, cost, efforts, and all that stuff, and to pitch it through. But as at a stage where we are today, I think it's a great field to evolve. There are a lot of use cases, a lot of potential gaps that are existing in organizations, and maybe start small is is my mantra. Primarily, don't try to burn an ocean or bring in something. Have a llama in place and without even thinking of. So start small, make a small use case, see the value add, and then start well, primarily keep building on that. The other path areas which I thought I just scripted it out, and primarily I just want to give it out. And I know there is a hackathon around the corner, so some of those aspirations, if goes into these guys' mind, and primarily they can help solve those industry problems, is attack path analysis. I mean, there are, how do I know today, while we understand AI does vulnerability prioritization, right? If there is an issue that goes wrong, these guys, primarily through the models, I can figure out what the exposure lies, what's the asset criticality, how things have been going wrong, what is the modus operandi failures or the threat intel failures, and it can give me vulnerability prioritization. But it's still, and there are very handful set of people who do attack path analysis. I mean, saying, oh, if this is a compromise and this is the next compromise and this is the next compromise, taking a passive data of everything and gives me an attack path. So that's something which can actually help me decide on where the priority of my budgets or investments have to go. The other is, can I foresee simulations? Can I foresee attack simulations? Which today BAS tools are all still traditional way. You configure it identifier. There are very few tools which actually morphs itself or changes the behavior of its own self, which is something which would be a good use case for me to build in a BAS tool, right? So I have seen everything that's happening there in the on the fly, depending on the learning of the environment. It's actually changing path. So which is for my own simulation, I don't want attacker to use that, but proactively I should be on a defense side. I want to be prepared for something like that. 5G security is another area where AI can be a big contributor. I mean, primarily the kind of risks that will come with 5G, I don't think so. The traditional things are ready for it, right? So
I
this is
think the three things you mentioned are very interesting, and which is really tied up with the generation capability of LLMs, right? So one is the uh, understand the return of investment, especially the investment which are risk-based investments. So understand entire environment and help you understand whether this investment is yielding this result to you or not. We usually call it security validation. So it could certainly, the generation capability can help you to really do that. Second, which you rightly mentioned, is the attack path. An attack path is possibilities, right? And there are multiple attack paths that could lead to, and we know that in millions there will be one that will get successful, right? And we have to find that one thing which could create a problem for us, and it can help you to generate various different scenarios, and you out of that you can find this could be possible problem for you. And third, which is very also important, is like in BAS attack simulation, it can really, because it can generate a lot of simulated environment for you, and it can change based on very small minute change you can do. So these are very interesting areas for somebody which is looking at a generative AI. So we have 45 companies nowadays working with us with different use cases of generative AI. I can really take this input to work with them. So we have created a cohort of 45 companies which can develop a generative AI solution
I'll
for
give you
cyber.
one more, I mean, before you go to the next one, which is again something which I felt, uh, it's part of the incident response process. I mean, what I feel is root cause analysis, which again I feel is a larger gap across the enterprises,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
people believe their first leg of issue is the root cause. But I come from a mindset, till the time you don't answer the 5 times why, you don't
yeah,
actually know the root cause.
yeah.
So generating an incident report can be a good use case when you have a Gen AI model and you have access to everything.
Yeah.
So you can see the impact analysis, you can do the root cause analysis, you can generate a report, you can do everything that is required for triaging, and everything is that is required to generate an incident report, which can give and also
Yeah.
update the knowledge base according to what potentially has gone wrong. So the entire leg of that is something which can be generated through this Gen AI, having all the information available. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I just interrupted.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is also a very good use case basically, right? And now in a little bit shifting gear with prank. So one is we talked about security, and these use cases, we have practical use cases. The other part is the fraud management as well. That's the bigger thing when you talk about India as a geography, right? And all of us are worried about the nowadays I see the fraudsters are able to really look at very distant looking context, and they can bring together and they can create a modus operandi out of it, basically, right? So how do you use this capability to to manage the fraud, both preventive and reactive perspective as well.
Yeah. I think it's very interesting. I see today Android and everywhere else, um, the way it works is blacklisting of numbers people report, and then Android tells, hey, this might be suspected spam. That's where it is. But interestingly enough, a lot of spoofing is happening in a way. Hey, I'm calling from Department of Telecom, and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
uh, I think at that point of time, at least I have not seen examples coming out for helping consumer side fraud yet. But my sense is, given the scale and scope, and this is probably a hackathon idea, when you get a call like this at that point of time, can somebody listen in? You have on the phone and then respond to that. Okay, this seems like a dubious call. The other one is basically in WhatsApp. People clone the WhatsApp numbers, take the likeness of and then start send me money and the like, right? Um, and I think for at least, like, I just imagine for my parents, for example, it's much easier for them to believe something coming and saying, "Hey, this looks like a official number," and the like. And uh, uh, so the AI can assist over there by saying, "Hey, this is not a very simple check. For example, this looks like Priyank's photo and this looks like Priyank's number, but it is not." Now, this ideally should be built into all our communication means. If it is not, then a AI-based engine which can help humans assist on at that point of time, and which can read the screen and say, "I'm reading a." I mean, that is where now the challenge comes: is can AI run on the edge on these devices?
yeah.
Because you don't want to be sending this data back to some centralized
Yeah, and I
location.
think Edge are becoming more competent enough to help you do this kind of thing. Only challenge here is it's easy to build solution for enterprises, right? But when you have to build
Yes.
solution for the end consumer, so where exactly you put that solution and who would buy that solution? So that's a big challenge here to solve. But aggregate level, this is more aggregate level solution, right? And who pays for it and who installs it? So that becomes a challenge here, basically.
No, you're right. So I think finally the customer will have to pay.
Yeah,
I think like antivirus, everybody pays,
yeah, yeah.
right? Unfortunately, I think the time has come. We might have to pay for fraud prevention applications as well. Yeah.
And nowadays, the extent and severity of the frauds are going to such a level where people may like to pay for such kind of capability that may come to the end user devices. Basically, only challenge there will be if you install something application, your operating system should allow you to look at those calls and help you with all possible data sets. And so that would be another challenge because nowadays operating system and Play Stores and especially they are very close knit because of the privacy and security concern. If that is getting solved, I think people will like to pay for such kind of services as well. Like,
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think the bigger challenge also is because with the entry of nation states into hacking data, even then, any application you install, even for fraud prevention, becomes an area for entry onto the system, right? And that is a challenge.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, to be honest, even a very simple assistive technology like explaining somebody how fraud can happen in their language
yeah,
in India can go a long way. We
yeah,
are all talking in English, but somebody can go and talk in, Kannada and explain, okay, this is how you can be taken advantage of. I think awareness is the first top of the funnel. Like we all say, right? Training the user is the first step towards
yeah.
secure, right? So that I think is the most important need, and it's a simple to do thing. I think definitely hackathon may lots of people should try it.
Yeah. Rajesh, you come from financial sector and the fraud management is one of the key thing that grapples the financial sector. And the main percentage wise, we may not be that significant, but number wise, we are significant. So how do you see use of this capability in managing the fraud better and reducing, curbing those frauds happening in the country?
I think typically AI has been there in use, while not to a very mature level. I mean, in my experience in banks, uh, so one is this DTM, the digital transaction monitoring solutions, always was working on AI model. So that you used to learn through a traffic flows, that you see what behaviorally you are doing different. So all those things were always there. But despite of that, the frauds were still going on and on. So I think key areas which I feel industry will leverage from and can be a good value add is to avoid those mule account cases or these KYC fraud environments wherein we have seen there cases where single guy comes across with 20 SIMs with different morphing and all that stuff. So probably doing a KYC revalidation, not a KYC validation per se, having the base data of everything in a bank. If the models exist, okay, let me go and figure out how many people look similar and are probably having different phone numbers or different identities. So where they have forged those identity details and are used for fraudulent transaction is something which we can curb out. So that's something. KYC revalidation is something which I feel can be a good use case to solve, and which once the regulations come in and there's a solution that exists, would actually unearth a lot of these potentially spurious accounts which are existing used for fraudulent transactions. I thought telco did attempt something like that for their word, but it's good time that the banking industry also pick up those domains. The second area which I sorry you
No,
the
no, please,
second
please
area
go ahead.
which I feel is on this deepfake stuff. Primarily, it's very important that we have these deepfake identifiers or identification, and one is at the caller stage, other is at the account opening stage. I mean, do we believe that all the video KYCs which are today happening have these deepfake filters behind it? Because it should not be ending up. So how is it that we can make a visibility that, okay, at least on the enterprise side, I totally agree with Priyank. So more so from centralized controls, we probably can invest it better and get it success better. The moment the control moves to the end user, it becomes very difficult and to deploy. So let's move something like this on the back end, because anyway the video KYCs are also validated, but that is still, because of that, again we are still seeing some frauds and cases where the deepfake looks so genuine and people are not able to differentiate between a deepfake and actual. So deepfake detectors is something which can actually help. Third is there are a lot of voice authenticators, voice based authentication which happens in some of the banks. So voice cloning detection also can be a good use case to put in, saying was, is there any user primarily whose voice is imitating a voice? I mean, today there are mimicry artists who can probably mimic anybody's voice. Right. So is that's again a use case wherein the validation, maybe on a contact center or in organizations which allow a voice modulation based authentication can be taken for a ride. So it's important that we have some of those as the other two areas which are little subjective, and I feel over a period of time industry can build on, is device binding, where probably more and more work would need to be done. Today it is either on IMEI, SIM, or some information that's available on the devices. So can there be a better way using AI to at least be reasonably sure the guy who's coming from the other side is the right resource or right device? Because that's something which will actually curtail a lot of traffic which is originating from another machine, posing as, because here what we are contesting out is you are not the customer, somebody else has come in. So if we can build out something on the device identifier with at least the metadata information of that, which makes non-refutable or non-revocable, is something which can lead a long way in leading that. The last one is, can we build something like a container? It's again reiterating the point which you and Priyank were discussing on. Say, if not a fraud application, can I create a wrapper for any of these critical enterprise applications which actually isolates this app from rest of his device? So can that be built in as part of maybe a SIM offering itself? Can it be built out as a mobile device rendering, whichever way, so that I isolate or containerize that particular application? So if there is any screen overlay or anything that's happening, it's actually put to rest. And the
These
last,
are very critical use cases that you have been really listing it down, and I'm sure all the participants here are listening and taking note of it. And I'm also requesting them, if there are any questions that they have to this panel, please feel free to ask these questions or put in the chat so I can take it. Next 2-3 minutes we can spend on your question if there are some questions available here. But you can continue with the last point,
yeah,
Rajesh sir.
the last one which I had was, and this actually summarizes everything, is build a competency for anti-spoofing. Now, anti-spoofing can be a device, can be a person, can be biometric, anything. So build that as a use case and derive on how you can avoid anti-spoofing. I mean, that anti-spoofing is something which is making the organization feel the other guy is the right guy. I mean, build up your use cases depending on what you feel is applicable and the industry that you understand best, because that's something which I feel is a requirement. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, these are really, I mean, I'm really liking this session because so many practical application constraint and possibilities that we discuss. And one of the area that we discuss is there are some areas still at the aggregate level, at the consumer level, somebody has to work. And what I foresee in MIT is trying to do with this all the complaints that have been registered until now, and trying to categorize those complaints registered by, and using that capability made available to the people who are registering those cases. This is a probably first critical step in the direction where I perceive might is putting together AI capability at aggregate level, and where it will help consumer a lot, and it can also help banking and financial system quite better basically. And this is definitely right case, but there are a lot of use cases that we just discussed and which could provide a quite a good new problem statement for new set of hackathons, which probably will take it once this particular use case goes ahead. So I think really thank you, Priyank and Rajesh sir, for joining us today, and really going into the nuances of the AI in the context of cybersecurity, fraud management, and really going to the practical challenges, more importantly, practical use cases that AI can solve. And I'm sure the audience here would have really gain out of this interaction and really looked at those use cases that you just talked about, right? With this, thanking Kavita ma'am and Anurag, and over to you, Anurag, to conclude the discussion.
Thank you so much, Vinayak ji, Rajesh ji, and Prayank for this wonderful discussion. I think we have two questions so far. If you'd like to take up the
Yeah,
first.
so there are two questions here. Means one is, can we use any pre-trained models which require GPUs to run? Because we can.
Oh, I
Oh,
think
I
these.
think that is
Sorry.
for your
Yeah.
hackathon. And the next question is, how can categorization be done with the high accuracy? This is again
Uh, uh,
for
yeah.
your hackathon, Anurag.
Yeah, I
Again,
think these
quite
are
good.
hackathon related questions. Sumit, would you like to take up the questions and answer in the chat? And how do you think? I think there is one question for the panel. How do you think data privacy can be handled while using AI systems?
Yeah. So uh, I think Priyank talked about key data redaction when AI system can understand the personal information, and probably there are ways to handle that. But Priyank, you can a little bit talk on how do you think that data privacy can be handled while using AI system?
Yeah, I think the question is a little more generic. So I'm unclear whether we are talking about, let's say, data privacy inside training data for a AI system, or I mean, there are two ways, right? So you've ended up putting your data inside a training data, and then the AI system now knows about you without any access control. So information which was supposed to be known only to, let's say, Vinayak, is I can now access as Priyank. Whereas if you're using RAG systems, there you can put some access control, which basically looks at the question and can say, okay, these part of the rows can be accessed only by a role-based access RBAC, right? So I think that is one way data privacy can be handled. But yeah, I think training data, if you're putting in, then it's very tricky. And we are starting to see we are starting to see companies which are helping when you create a data set for training, they go through it to analyze and say, okay, these parts of the data should be culled out because they violate data privacy. Um, and then two is also there are applications which do anonymization of PII. If even if you have to use training data ke andar, information. And then the third set is basically at the time of inference when you are asking on chat some information, then data privacy has to be maintained. And at that point of time, it again reverse anonymization can be done. So it picks up the data um, from the database, but it converts the data into anonymized data. The most common hack which I've seen or is uh, y- asking a customer chatbot and then it picks up data from some other customer. So you're authenticated as one customer, but it is able to pick up data some. So those things have I've seen happen, and then people have put in solutions against that.
Yeah, and there are different ideas for such kind of use cases. How can you isolate the context and some the firewall idea so you can put in there. So there are a lot of new paradigm of security solutioning coming in this and privacy solutioning. But yes, that could be a part of other discussion. In the interest of time, I will certainly like to close. There are one or two questions which probably I will respond to you on offline. But thank you, Rajesh sir, and thank you, Priyank, for joining us today and really helping us to understand this better. And we'll keep interacting with you on such kind of important, insightful topic. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you,
Thank
Malik
you.
sir.
Thank you so much, everybody.